So welcome to RunChatLive, episode 11, I believe it is. And yeah, I'm excited about today's guest. The last couple have been fantastic, but I thought really now I want to give one for the runners, purely for the runners. And one of the biggest topics at the moment is gait analysis. Do you need it? What's it for? Is it overrated? Is it underrated? Is it just for the pros? Can somebody doing a couch to 5K benefit from it? So I'm delighted this morning to have with me a fellow gait analyst, Mr. Nick Knight from NKSportsPodiatry. He's going to be joining us in a second. And basically, we're going to try and keep it very runner orientated. If therapists are watching this on the recording, then you might pick us up for some slight bad use of word. We're going to try and stay away from sagittal planes and transverse planes and subtalar joint, this and that. We're going to try and keep it so that the runner out there can actually understand what we're talking about and apply it, and know how to get the best out of gait analysis wherever they decide to go to. So do excuse us in advance if the terminology is not that precise. But as always, we'll be trying to back everything we talk about up with evidence, because we know that one of the big problems in running injury management and performance is just anecdotal. This worked for so-and-so, so it must work for everybody. We know that's not the case. But anyway, so if you do enjoy this recording and you enjoy what myself and Mr. Nick Knight have to say, then do please share it on your social media. We do this, Nick's giving up his time for free. We're not making anything out of this. We just try and get some good quality information out there because we're runners ourselves, and we know we've been given bad advice, and we just wanted to share it to get it out there. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Mr. Knight to join us, and I will let him introduce himself. Good morning, Mr. Knight.
Morning.
Well, that sounds very formal.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Too formal for a Sunday morning. Thank you for asking me to come on and chat about all things sort of gait analysis and trying to keep it as running focused as we possibly can. So I am a clinician, but I do see runners on a daily basis. So, but if I end up getting into clinical speak, just give me a slap on the wrist and then I'll rephrase it back into English. So yeah, by background, I am a sports podiatrist based out along the south coast like yourself, but I'm just sort of further west in Southampton and a little bit north in Basingstoke. And gait analysis is something that over time I've become more and more passionate about, and then I've personally, my business has invested in better and better equipment to help get us there. So currently we sort of offer sort of your standard 2D gait analysis, but then we're very fortunate to have Run 3D, which is a 3D gait analysis system using what we call Vicon cameras. So they're the same sort of cameras that are used in movies to like film like Planet of the Apes and whatnot like that, which is really, really cool tech.
Brilliant. No. We're looking a bit more into. I'm going to try not to get too geeky myself because I haven't used Run 3D. We use motion metrics here, so I'm going to try and get some information out of you regarding your software as well later on. Let's start the ball rolling. I'm always going to try that there's a runner watching this who maybe is interested in gait analysis, but they fear that it's not for them. Or maybe they've got the wrong idea about what it's for, the expectation's wrong. So in your experience, let's kick the ball off with, what do most runners coming to you find, what they're looking for out of gait analysis? What's the main thing?
A lot of runners try and sort of treat it as the holy grail. Sort of thinking, right, I can get a gait analysis done and it will solve all my problems. From my perspective, I don't see pain-free runners in clinic. I'm only seeing people with pain, and maybe we can chat about later about doing gait analysis on pain-free runners, because I've got some views on that as well. And I think for me, what a gait analysis does, it just helps me get more information about the problem and the runner in front of me, so we can help build a better treatment plan for them. And as I say to my runners, it's sort of, we can help get the pain to settle, but actually the key part is, and the hardest part is to try and get the pain to settle, but then help try and do the best we can to minimize the risk of it coming back again, because the last thing we want in clinic is a runner that has to keep coming back year on year end I purely work in private practice, and I love to try and actually discharge my patients, so I don't actually have to see them again and just give them the tools just to go and do what they want with. So yeah, it's something that I think is really, really helpful in my clinical practice, but I think it has to be used in the right way. And then it's all about then interpreting that information you get correctly. I think it comes back to the saying, look, we can have all the gear, and then we got to make sure we've got some idea of what we're trying to talk about as well at the same time.
That would make quite a good kind of slogan, wouldn't it? I'm just trying to think, all the gear, but no idea. That would work.
Yeah.
So that's interesting already. So you've brought in a nice distinction between runners who go for gait analysis, who are in pain,
yeah,
and then maybe the runner who goes into gait analysis, who at our end we're getting more and more of now, runners who aren't necessarily in pain, but they just want to make sure that either one, they're not disappearing down a road which could end in pain, or two, they just want to improve their performance.
Yeah.
So for the moment then, for the first bit, let's stick with the runner who's in pain.
Yeah.
Okay. What are the most common pains that runners come to see you with and think the gait analysis might help?
The biggest is, the three biggest I personally see in clinic is heel pain, shin pain, and knee pain are the three biggest areas that we see issues with.
Okay. What do, because obviously you give a case history, what do most runners believe is the cause of their pain? Have they got any idea, or they come like, tell me, what am I doing wrong?
Most people, it's two things. They think that they're running wrong, or they're wearing the wrong shoes. They're the two biggest beliefs that come into clinic of why they're in the place that they are in. And don't get me wrong, footwear and gait is important, but in my opinion, there are much bigger things we need to chat about first. So I sort of say to my runners, when they come in, it's sort of almost in like a hierarchy of importance, is that actually I want to know how much you're running, and I want to look at sort of your chronic workload ratio, which is basically looks at how much running you're doing and how much you've increased in a certain amount of time, because then we can then maybe try and link that to possibly back to picking up an injury. Then I want then to look at, are you actually strong enough to do what you need to do? So if you've been running half marathons and getting no issues, and you've been doing work to help keep strong for that, but then you up to running marathon distance, have you then upped your strength work? And then after that, then we then come down to the biomechanical, the gait side of things. So that's the way I tend to approach it in clinic. The gait comes sort of third in that hierarchy of things. So yes, it is important, but I think we need to try and get runners to believe that there are other things to think about as well.
I listened to you, and I was thinking the other day, actually, I was having a discussion with a colleague. I've got to start inviting guests who I know do things that I don't like, because I'm sitting listening to you and thinking, wow, everything you're saying is just brilliant. But I know that this isn't the experience that everyone gets when they go for a gait analysis. Yeah, I want you to go. I'm going to cut this interview short because you're just making too much sense. Okay.
Yes, I'm off.
I've got a backup here from just down the road offering gait analysis for trainers. No, it's true though, and it's tricky because there is this confirmation bias. Yeah. Because in your experience, I mean, let's imagine, without naming any names,
yeah,
how is potentially a runner's experience of gait analysis going to be negative or non-productive, or what might a runner go to with a label gait analysis, and what might they receive which in your view might not be the right way to look at things?
So for me, yeah, I won't name names, but for me, like being a podiatrist, I sort of the way I explain to people, I look from the foot up. If you see physios and sports therapists, they'll look at the hip down, and then we sort of meet in the knee sort of area. So it's been ingrained into me throughout my training to look from the foot up. So most people come in, they've been told, oh, I've had a gait analysis, I overpronate, and now I need these shoes because I overpronate, and I've got loads of issues with the I just don't like the term overpronation because it just doesn't exist. And then B, there isn't any current good amount of evidence out there that then works with matching what your foot does to a shoe. And then the other one is they've read books or they've read online, and they sort of think there's a certain way to run, which means that they are going to become pain-free, and they've then tried to adopt that running technique. And they're the two sort of biggest things that I sort of see when they come in, when they've had stuff previously done. And then it's hard, because then we've then got to take the patient through, the runner, sorry, through that unlearning process, and then try and then build it back up again, because there are certain amount of people, they can run in a certain way by a certain book and they will not get any problems because their body can cope with that. But then there are a large amount of people who then get problems as well. And it's about, there's no right or wrong ways. It's a very personalized thing. So I'm not a fan of getting all my patients to run in one certain way. We know there are certain things we can do to offload knee pain, to help offload shin pain, to help offload heel pain, but we're making those changes just to try and alleviate someone's symptoms. But the big caveat to all that is that if we adapt the way someone runs and we take load off the knee, we're going to put it somewhere else. So we've got to make sure that the runner is strong enough to cope with putting that load elsewhere, and we don't basically cure one injury but then give them another, because I don't like sort of creating problems. I like helping helping people with problems. So.
Yeah, so it's really interesting that, I mean, I'm not sure there's many. I'm going to say, I mean, I always see, I think for podiatry in particular, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all therapies, all professions and healthcare professions have had to evolve. The ones which have to evolve most of all have been ones that were kind of created back in the 1830s or something. So obviously chiropractic, osteopathy, they were all based on ideas at the time that were revolutionary, and they were much better than the medicine that was being offered before then. But they've had to evolve because we now know that certain ideas like manipulating bones cures everything from period pains to headaches. We know it's less likely than the guy at the time thought. Podiatry traditionally did have very much a foot approach and maybe didn't necessarily consider other factors. Now I guess it's had to evolve because of the whole biopsychosocial approach. And so has your kind of, and also I can't say kinematic, kinetic, also the fact that what we see in terms of is actually moving, may not be as important as what's happening with the forces, which of course we can't see. Yes. So I was chatting to Ian Griffiths last time about, and he was kind of saying that a lot of the time podiatrists have had to move now. They've had to evolve and re-educate themselves a little bit in realizing that what we can't see is often just as important as what we can see. So how does that affect you in terms of what you offer and yeah?
So, well, from a case analysis viewpoint, a patient really summed it up well for me, and that they were a medic, they were a doctor themselves, and they come in, I think it was knee pain, but that's irrelevant, and they sort of said they went through the whole Run3D gait analysis process. We went through then a rehab program, then a bit of running education, and they got back, and I haven't seen them since. And they sort of gave me the analogy of gait analysis, or has the potential to be almost like an MRI of how you run. And I think what they were meaning by that is that it still gives us a nice dynamic picture of what happens when you're running. And then they sort of said, well, then the issue then I have got as a clinician is that then it gives me all this information, but then I've got to work up what is relevant to that runner at that time. And then we can then go back in medicine. We use the analogy a lot, treat the patient, not the scan, because a gait analysis may show up something that we think it's actually just a red herring. It's not actually relevant at all. We don't really need to worry about it. So I think as time has evolved, technology's got better. We're able to see more, but I think we still have to go back to what's presenting in front of us and using the gait analysis as an information gathering tool to help us get to where we need to. And just because we see something on a gait report, it doesn't mean that that is causing all the issues, and it may be a red herring.
That's really nice. I haven't heard that before. Yeah, so there's a double learning curve there for runners and patients. First of all, realizing that what shows up on an MRI isn't I was going to say isn't black and white, but that's not a very good choice of words because it is black and white. But it isn't necessarily right. If you see what looks like degeneration there, research shows that that degeneration might not be the cause of the pain. And we know that once you hit 30, 40 years old, degeneration starts escalating. It's just like, I can't remember who coined the phrase, but it's like wrinkles on the inside. You don't complain about your arm being wrinkled. Well, some people complain, but we don't associate wrinkles in the eyes with headaches in the same way as we shouldn't associate degeneration with pain necessarily. So yeah, it's a good analogy, because then you look at a running form and you're going to see things which might be potentially signs of causing injury or causing pain, but you've got to look, analyze, look at the evidence and just see whether it is. So it is all a bit of a jigsaw, isn't it, with gait analysis? It's not black and white, to say the least. I want to ask you another question now.
Yeah.
Because again, still, I'd like to say it's gone down, but I don't think it has. You might have a different experience over in Southampton, but how many of your patients come, or your runners come, seek the services of gait analysis in order to select the correct running shoe? And how much do you think gait analysis can actually help in choosing the right running shoe?
How long have we got?
For this question, I would say about 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a minefield, because there is this notion ingrained into the running industry that you have a gait analysis, you look at what the foot does, and then you then select the shoe accordingly. And as clinicians, we know that is not true, and we know that hasn't been the case for donkey's years. The issue we got is that currently we haven't really got a replacement idea that is simple, that easy to use, that people in a running shop, so if you got a young runner who's trying to earn a few quid, working on the running shop on a Saturday, we need to come up with a tool that is easy to use and is quick. And currently, as it stands, that there isn't anything out there. So we sort of turned around and said, right, you can't use this. But then we sort of said, we just aimed it there. We said, you can't use this, but that's it. But there's nothing else. And but that could be possibly changing. So Solomon are about to launch a new way in that we are going to look for running shoes and assessing runners in a few minutes in the running store with a few ideas, and more will become clear soon. And yeah, it'll be quite exciting.
Is that exclusive? Is that an exclusive for RunChatLive? Does anyone else know about this?
I know about it because I was on the Solomon think tank, and I'm allowed to mention it. So whether it may well be, I don't know how many people know about it. But yeah, so that you can take it.
You heard it first here on RunChatLive. That's breaking news that Solomon will be soon curing the problem to running shoe selection.
Well, curing, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. They're offering us a possible solution in a way to help select running shoes. But then if we then look further up the chain, so if we look at hip and knee issues and whatnot, and so there are, say for example, if you've got if we talk about gait analysis and 3D gait analysis, we've got 3 ways the body can move, and we sort of got rolling in, rolling out, moving up, moving down, and twisting. Trying to put it in simple terms, and not use transverse, sagittal, and frontal. So if we get someone, say, with a runner with knee pain, actually sometimes if their knee's not bending as much as we want to when they're running, and there's a slight overstride and it's overloading the knee, then actually something like a slight rocker bottom shoe, something like a Hoka, can be helpful in some patients some of the time. So you can then use gait analysis to say, look, you're getting a few knee symptoms and whatnot, you're running like this, actually this shoe may be helpful for you. And if we look at the way the footwear industry is going and changing and whatnot, if we look at the new Solomon Predicts, for example, they just completely changed in the way that they're like no other shoe. So I've actually got a bottom of them here. Let's show. Is this? Can you?
Yeah, perfect.
It's here. So that's the undersole of the shoe. So it's broken into 10 little pods and separate compartments, and each one is flexible and it bends. So if you can actually pick the shoe up, it bends, it flexes, and whatnot. But they've got data showing that you can reduce knee internal rotation and reduce the loading through the knee with that shoe that I know they are going to be presenting soon. So it's about, actually, we haven't got to worry about big, heavy, supportive shoes, because using footwear, I think the biggest thing we need is they need to get lighter, because we know this, it's well documented that the lighter the shoe, the more energy you save. So I think when we look at footwear, we need to go down that approach first. And the gait analysis bit, so for example, in clinic, I don't have a patient come in. If a patient wants to come in, they've got no pain and they want a gait analysis to choose their shoes, I'll turn around and say, no, you don't need to do that. Just go and get a set of shoes that fit correctly and are comfortable. And
so you do that. You say no, put your money away.
Yeah. I don't, it's an overkill. I don't need to do a gait analysis on those people. They've got no pain. They want some advice around footwear. And actually, the best current advice I can give them is pick a comfortable shoe that fits correctly. The majority of people don't wear shoes that fit correctly anyway, so that's a big issue in the first place. And then comfort, it is so important when it comes to footwear selection. And
so, sorry to interrupt, but this is like getting interesting. Well, it was always interesting, but so expand on the majority of runners don't wear shoes which are correctly fitting already. What are you talking about?
So there was one of my mentors, Trevor Pride, done a study. I can't remember how many people he asked in his clinic up in around London way. But essentially 90% of people wore shoes that didn't fit correctly. And then there has been a bigger study that shows around about 65%, I think it is, don't wear shoes that fit correctly. So I often see in clinic that people come in, they sort of say, oh, I have to go one size up in my running shoes compared to my normal shoes. Normally that just tells me they got one pair of shoes that don't fit correctly in the first place. And it's, for example, if you get a look at people, they get sort of bleeding under the nails and sort of what we call medical term is subungual hematomas, if anyone's interested, or they get black toenails. A lot of the time that's just because shoes don't fit correctly. And as well, people who often get numbness in the front of their foot, it's quite often, I see some patients, they're just wearing shoes that are too narrow. You put in a set of shoes that are slightly wider and the symptoms resolve in some people. So I think before we try and overcomplicate it, I use the analogy in clinic a lot: KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Let's just try and keep things as simple as we can. And if it's a case of, look, running shoes, comfortable, fit well, go from there. If you start getting issues, come back and see me. But as it stands, I won't do a gait analysis on you just to select your running shoe per se in clinic. I think once we educate the running stores better, and with the new things coming from Solomon, the running shoe clinic, the running shoe shops can do all that for us. Because yes, making sure that the foot contacts the ground throughout the gait cycle and everything looks nice and stable in a way, not stable from a sort of supporting the foot, but making sure with the shoe striking evenly. I think we can educate running shops to do that, and they haven't got to come and pay a clinician to do that for them. But time will tell. There's a lot of work to be done for that.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. I'm looking forward to. I had no idea. I'll have to do some research and read up on this Solomon thing to see if there's some literature out there. Okay, so shoes. Yeah, it's a tricky one. And yeah, it's great that runners. I've got to say, hand on heart, if someone calls up here and they say, I want to get analysis because I want to know what shoes I need to wear, then if I'm in clinic and the receptionist has taken out something, then I'll kind of grab it and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because I find that if someone is still looking for that perfect shoe, then normally it's because they've got some kind of issues. They're attributing some form of pain or lack of performance to not having the right shoe.
Yeah.
So generally, I think most people who are looking for the right shoe, there's stuff we can do with them. It's just getting to the crux of the matter. Why do you want a new shoe? Because I keep getting knee pain. Okay, well, let's come in for gait analysis, but don't expect me to kind of basically solve your problems with giving you a new shoe. We may find that it's some kind of running form related. We might need to retrain you a running form. We might find it's strength related, like you said at the beginning. So
if we take my 3D gait analysis, I before I got it, I thought I had a good idea of how the lower limb functioned and how runners run. When I got that kit, I realised I knew nothing. It's sort of the learning curve has just been like that, because it just offers a whole, well, it does literally offer the third dimension compared to 2D, but I won't get too geeky on that. And so if we talk about running shoes, I can't remember the last time I've actually then recommended a supportive sort of style of running shoe, because they're just too heavy. And a lot of the time we see runners, they're coming in and actually the issues aren't footwear related, it's strength related. If you ask most runners, how much strength training are you doing outside of running? That's just like a swear word to some runners. It's sort of like, and if you make that suggestion to them, it's like you just ask them to like amputate a leg or something. It's like, so, but that needs to change, because there is plenty of documented evidence out that we can reduce the risk of injury and help improve performance and whatnot just by getting people fitter and stronger. But there was also a recent paper published looking at the perceptions of what people think about running shoes and runners think about running shoes. And there is still a massive belief out there that the wrong running shoe will cause an injury. And that's just not the case. So that just shows us that we have got an awful amount of work as clinicians to do to try and sort of break this down. And I haven't got the perfect answer of how we're going to do it. But if we again look at the evidence, we know that it takes around like 18 years for a sort of a clinical study to become normal practice everywhere. See, that's a really, really long time. And that's just sort of normal practice. And that's not even then titrating it down to runners themselves. Yeah. So that gap may be even longer. So we've got to do something to actually cut that gap significantly. And I think that the 18, like now we've got the power of social media. I think there's stuff that we need to start working on to try and fix that problem, because it is a big problem.
Yeah, the trouble is it takes 30 seconds for a hip flexor advert, stretch your hip flex and solve all your problems to get out on social media, and for 10,000 people to like it and share it with their friends. So it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? This is one of the things we're trying to do with this is, okay, if people like social media and they're willing to watch stuff and they like tuning in and they've all got their mobiles, it's great. But it's getting the information out there which is relevant and not just the fast kind of buck, one size fits all stuff, which is a personal pet hate of mine. So yeah, you mentioned strength training, which is curious. Okay, I mean, I'm a massive fan of strength training, and it does seem it's not the answer for everybody, but we know that potentially, well, we know that strength training can reduce overuse injuries by 50%. There's some good studies on that. But we've got someone here who you might not know. She's she's very popular on the South Coast where we are. Yeah. Lisa Shovers is leaving. So I'm going to put Lisa's comment up.
Yeah.
Now, one thing about Lisa Shovers is she might be an exception to the rule in terms of strength training, because she's stacked. She's a personal trainer. She's strong. She doesn't stop getting strong. So I'm going to bring her comment up. Yeah. If you just finished her first ultra, and if anyone doesn't follow Lisa's social feed, then you should do, because she's very inspirational. She's a local personal trainer here in Brighton and in the area. So obviously you can't diagnose because you haven't seen her face to face, but this is a personal trainer who's very strong, strength the whole time, just done her first ultra, and she's getting knee pain. Mm-hmm. What were some of the first few things you'd look at? Obviously you've got no other case history apart from that, but she's a strong girl. So what would you say to that?
So the way I then look at that is you can use rugby players as well as some of the analogies, and bodybuilders as well. You can be physically strong, but actually can you control that strength on running? So that neuromotor control. So I've seen patients who will happily squat 200 kilos, but you get them to do a single leg squat unloaded and they're all over the place. So I think it's about, and it's all about making sure your body's accustomed to doing that activity. So if you're into your weight training, your body's used to the weight training, but then if you then just start then going into your running, it still needs to be a gradual process. because your body has to become accustomed to that load of running, which is different from the load of weightlifting. Now, I think being fit and strong is really, really good. We've got to make sure then you can then control that strength during running. So what I will then say to my runners and my weightlifters who are running and are strong is sort of actually, do we need to start, instead of working on sort of big, heavy double leg exercises like squats and deadlifts and front squats, which they can do really easily, do we actually need to tone it back and actually start looking at single leg stuff and start making it more running specific for them? And then also actually that's when the gait analysis can then come in handy as well, because we can then have a look at the way that you are running in relation to the knee pain. Then we can say, is there actually some way in that you are running that will then be contributing towards that knee pain? So it may not be a strength issue. You may find that Lisa's strong, her actually neuromotor control is really good, single leg squat really well, single leg load really well, and her body's accustomed. But actually, there are certain things happening the way that she's running that are just contributing towards the knee pain. So then actually gait re-education may be a better option for her rather than more strength work. And then that's when the gait analysis and then taking your whole history comes in. And it's about trying to work out, the way I like to phrase it with, there are many ways you can treat multiple things. In my head, I say to my patient, I like to try and go for the big wins first. I look at the patient, I get all the information, and then I'll sort of say, look, in my opinion, these are going to, this treatment modality is going to give us the biggest chance of the biggest win we will get. So let's go for this one first. So that doesn't work, then we'll go on to this. And then if that doesn't work, we'll go on to this. And it's, so for some patients, strength training may be their big win. For some patients, orthosis may be their big win. For other patients, it may be that their gait re-education is their big win. And actually, a bit of a cap tip, as it were, to Brad Neal, because he sort of, I was at my local college podiatry conference, and he sort of phrased it like that. And I thought, do you know what? I like that way of phrasing that. So I can't take credit for that. I stole that from him effectively.
Yeah, well, we don't want to swell Brad's head up any bigger than it is, So, but yeah, Brad O'Neill. Anyone who doesn't follow Brad, what is he on Twitter and social media? It's just Brad O'Neill, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, Brad Neal, isn't it?
Brad Neal, isn't it? Yeah. So worth following Brad for, and especially anything to do with knees. One thing I've found very interesting, and I think Lisa's a good example of something which may be the case, and where gait analysis can help. Yeah, we know. I mean, research shows that just because you do, for example, the typical glute med strengthening, you might get much stronger at doing a leg abduction or some kind of something involving your glute med. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when you're running, your brain or nervous system is going to use that extra strength. Yeah. So this is where the gait retraining comes into it, and something I'm sure you do at your clinic as well is educating runners to realize that if you do the strength training, that's great, but it's not the be all and end all. We need to then train your body to actually use that strength actually within the context of running. So that could be the case when someone is very strong. I think typically the other thing I see about strength, which I'd like to talk to you about, is not all personal trainers, but a lot of personal training, boot camps, and just people down the gym tend to be very quads, front of the body, that sort of strength. And we know, for example, that knee pain can be connected to actually having a weak posterior chain, the hamstrings. And I've yet to find a boot camp, and I don't know about Lisa's classes and stuff, but I think it's trickier in a class environment, whether you're in a gym or in a park or something, to actually train the hamstrings and the calves. A lot of the exercises are less attractive, or maybe you need more equipment. But yeah, hamstring strength and knee pain, is that something you see in your clinic?
It is. It tends to me, hamstring strength, glute strength is the biggest one I find of knee pain, and then we know it's well documented the quad strength, but also hamstring strength is also, I think, important, because you obviously do. The beauty of running is that you do tend to use your quads, your hamstrings, and everything all at different times during that gait cycle. So with knee pain, we do see a lot of patients who have weakness in the hamstrings. The biggest area actually isn't the hamstrings for me, it's your calf. So actually, your gastrocnemius, and then actually your small calf muscle, your soleus, the one that sits behind it, that actually, if you speak to most runners, they don't know exists. And if you look at Seth O'Neill's work around Achilles problems and soleus strength, and actually we look at the loads, soleus takes more load on running than gastroc does, and so many runners just neglect that, but they also neglect hamstrings. So they work on glutes, they work on quads, but they also neglect hamstrings. And you're right, if you look at your typical, well, from the classes in my neck of the woods in sort of the Hampton area, is that they are all glutes and quad dominant, which is really, really good. But I think we also need to start hamstring stuff as well.
Yeah, I mean, the soleus makes it even more difficult because, I mean, you mentioned Seth O'Neill. I always call Brad O'Neill. It's Brad Neal and Seth O'Neill.
Yeah,
they've got no right to have the same surname and both be such great clinicians. But yeah, the soleus is an even more difficult muscle to target because Seth O'Neill has kind of said it could be. He's kind of shown it could be half your body weight to actually fatigue it. It's a very strong muscle, and half your body weight you're not going to achieve with a kettlebell. You know, really you're looking at a sandbag or going to a gym and using some form of equipment. So yeah, soleus muscle is a big one, like you say, which is neglected. Cool. Okay, this is all very much confirmation bias for me. It's fantastic. I'm hoping the message is getting out there with runners listening as well. If you hear it from me and you hear it from Nick, then hopefully it kind of makes some coins drop. But it is difficult because there's an awful lot of people out there who will focus just primarily on the glutes, or they will get you strong but won't say, right, now we need to look at your running form. Yeah. So if you're listening to this and it's ringing some bells, then just try and share it. What about, Nick, and this is where we might differ, I don't know, it might just be the same thing again. You haven't mentioned stretching yet. You haven't mentioned mobility, range of movement. Yeah. First of all, general, and then maybe because you're a specialist, obviously, in the foot, being a podiatrist, people worry about lack of movement, lack of dorsifol, lack of movement in the ankle. Won't go down the technical names. But how much do you see with runners that lack of range is an issue?
I would say I see more strength issues than I do flexibility issues. However, I then see people like myself where I'm physically strong, but I am so inflexible and so stiff. It's unbelievable. So actually, for me, yes, I need to do my strength work, but for me personally, I need to focus on my flexibility stuff. However, I tend to find that runners are quite good at doing their stretching these days. They all come in, they have their little morning routines that they do to work on flexibility. And maybe that's why I don't see as many flexibility issues compared to strength issues, because they're already doing it as part of their routine. They're sort of being ingrained into them already. But no, flexibility is important as well, because we know that having certain muscles that are tight can possibly have an impact on what we do when we run. So, for example, I know that I've got tight calf muscles, so when I run and when I walk, I lift my heel off the ground really, really, really early, which it doesn't currently give me any issues at all. But if I did start getting calf issues in the future, then that's something I would look at to see, okay, what can I do to improve at them?
Yeah, so you mentioned you've got tight calf muscles because you physically see it when you walk, the heel comes off. And do you see that? Is that specific to you, or do you see it much in runners?
No, I see it in runners. But most runners are better at doing their flexibility programs than I am. I would say I'm personally a little more strength biased than I am flexibility biased in my own training, my own personal life. But no, it's tight. Yeah, tight calves would be the biggest I see in runners, then followed by tight hamstrings if we're talking about muscle and flexibility, and then the hip flexors after that in the cohort of runners I see in clinic.
So with the tight calves, you can see maybe the heel coming up. You use a knee to wall test, and
knee to wall. So knee to wall test is technically not looking at calf tightness. Without trying to get too technical, knee to wall test looks at how stiff the ankle is as a whole. rather than the flexibility of the muscles. And actually, there is on the knee to wall test. So for the runners out there, just try and put it in simple terms, we basically will get you to stand close to the wall and basically get you to squat until your knee touches the wall and your heel stays in full contact with the ground. And then we'll either measure the distance from the wall or the angle of your shin bone. And we know that if you don't reach a certain distance or get a certain angle, that does increase your risk of getting an ankle injury because it increases the stiffness. And flexibility and stiffness are two separate things. And I think it's important that as clinicians, we remember that as well. So I can see someone who has slight calf tightness but doesn't have any ankle stiffness, and I can see someone who has good calf flexibility but has ankle stiffness present as well. And that they tend to be in the runners. The ones I tend to see the biggest ankle stiffness tend to be the runners who've had a ankle twisting injury in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I do struggle with. Just break down again, just for people watching. You said there's a difference between flexibility and stiffness, so expand on
that. So basically, the flexibility is how much throughout a range of motion, how much we can get the muscle to elongate and relax. Trying to simplify this, but not oversimplify it. It's surprisingly difficult. And then stiffness is just a physics term, looking at, trying to think of the best way to, without going too technical. We want to look at how much resistance is there in, it's not resistance, possibly, yeah, I'm trying to think, yeah. Looking at how much resistance there is within a motion. So if you take that knee to wall test, we want to look at actually how much resistance is there in the ankle when we start to sort of go into that ankle dorsiflexion, so doing that effectively.
Yeah, and of course, I suppose there could be other reasons. That's where you guys come in. It might not be a muscular issue. It could be a bony issue, or it could be a structural. It could just be the way they're put together. I mean, I've seen the knee to wall test is always tricky for me because I must admit I do use it, but I mainly use it to show that, as far as I see, a lot of runners have got, well, quite a few runners have actually, in my view, got too much range of movement. I reckon they've got no control over that potentially, and I use it as a way to indicate that strength training might be necessary, because again, for me, and as different clinicians, we use different words to mean different things, but for me, I try and make stiffness, I don't use it in a negative context. I try and use it as a way to make runners realize, educate them with regards to kind of being a tight spring and the whole kind of elasticity that's needed in running. I try and say, look, I need you to be stiffer. It's like, huh? You want me to be tighter? Not necessarily tighter, but I need you to be more reactive so you can bounce up and down. So I think that helps. I mean, I do try and keep my eyes open for when I believe that runners lack range of movement. And I must admit, I do struggle. Now and again, I might get someone in, but hamstrings, you said, for example, how would you test somebody to conclude that they didn't have enough range of movement in their hamstrings?
Well, this test that we use is a static test of just sort of lying people down, and you got two ways. You can either flex the hip, so you can bend the knee and then raise the leg up, or you can just raise the leg up and then you can then measure the angle. But then that's not a dynamic test. And that's part of my issue with static testing, is that a lot of these static tests that we do actually have no correlation to dynamic function. So that is the way in clinic we would do it. But as I sort of said, is that I see more strength issues than I do flexibility issues. That's
an interesting point you bring up, and it's something that runners should realize as well, and hopefully clinicians are making clear to them that I think both of us will do the static tests. We'll see when you lie down how high you can get your leg up. I think it's worth, I mean, I make a point of clarifying that if you do it yourself, to run, you don't need your leg up at 90 degrees.
No.
I think that maybe kind of, even for hurdling, you might need 60-70%, but for running, maybe 60% lift. Looking at running, sprinting, it might be higher, but that's something I'm always harping on about, is before people start stretching, just check whether they actually lack the range that's necessary for what they're going to do. Because I think in a lot of cases, And like you say, just because maybe you for example, I think most runners are exposed to the Thomas test. And there's been some good research on that as well, where we lie you at the end of a couch. We see how much your do that little thing so you see it. We see how much your leg drops over the end of the couch. And research has shown that maybe in a test, you looks like you have loads of range hanging over the couch, but then we look at your gait analysis and you're not extending that hip hardly at all, or vice versa. So again, it makes it not black and white, isn't it? It's a jigsaw pieces to take into consideration, and then see if they do tally up. Okay, let me move on because I'm conscious of time. 10:17. Let's talk a bit about running form. So you've already mentioned there's no one way to run, which is great. And again, that might be a wake-up call for certain runners just by saying that, because there's so many DVDs and educational workshops saying this is how you have to run, and they don't even, they're treating just runners as runners instead of individuals. But for gait analysis, what would you say? I want to talk about people who just come in for performance. Do you treat people who, or do you do gait analysis with people who just want to get the next PB or look at the way they run?
This is going to be really short because I don't. I'm only interested in people with pain. The way I view, if we want to change gait and performance, that's when I hand back to their coaches rather than me doing it, because I haven't got enough expertise or experience in using gait to increase performance factors. Okay,
that's no problem. So let's stick with pain. So if you could list 3 or 4 typical ways of running which could be keeping someone in pain or causing pain. We won't talk about potentially causing an injury in the future, but something which somebody might be doing which might be attributed to their knee pain or calf pain, or different ways of running.
Okay, so I think I'll look at it from, because most runners come in with me sort of saying that either heel striking is bad or that I need to run on the forefoot region. So if I talk about injuries that I then see around that, because so for example, if I have someone coming in who has an overstride and their knee sort of extends too much, so it doesn't bend as much as we want it to, and then lands heavy on their heel, I will tend to find that those patients tend to be presenting with some sort of anterior front of knee pain or shin pain. Then if I have runners coming in presenting with Achilles pain or pain around the ball of the foot, they tend to be the patients that are coming in landing on the ball of the foot region, so sort of your forefoot strikers, as it were. However, I have seen patients who overstride with reduced knee flexion who still land on the ball of their foot. So just because you change the way the foot lands, whether you strike on your heel or whether you land on the front of your foot, that doesn't mean that you're then going to change other parameters or other ways, the way you're running. And a lot of runners get focused on how's my foot landing, my heel striking, midfoot striking, forefoot striking. And to be honest, I'm not really concerned massively in clinic on whether you're heel striking, midfoot or forefoot. I'm more worried about where's that foot landing in relation to what we call your center of mass. Because we know that actually the closer we can get it back to center of mass, we can help try and reduce some of the loading. So what we will then do with those patients in with knee pain or whatnot is that they may still want to heel strike, but we'll just get them to shorten their stride length, increase their cadence to help them bring it under the central mass. And if they're still heel striking then, or if they're still forefoot striking, to me it's sort of, I'm not massively concerned, because actually I can show you runners that one foot does one thing, one foot does the other thing. And actually I can't remember the exact stats, but it's quite a high percentage of runners think they know the way they run, but actually when you video them, they're doing something completely different to what they perceive what they're doing. But going back to the question on running, the ways that you run and pathology we see in clinic, yeah, if we sort of say the overstriding with increased dorsiflexion landing on your heel, I see more associated with my knee pain patients and shin pain, and your forefoot striking is associated more with Achilles and forefoot issues. However, I still see people who get knee pain and shin pain who still land towards the forefoot region. So just because you run like that doesn't mean you're going to get those symptoms, but from the demographic I see of runners, that's sort of the pattern we sort of see, and then we can then look further up the chain at reduced hip flexion and increased reduce hip flexion and increase extension. So for example, my hamstrings patients, I tend to find that they have lots of hip extension, reduced knee flexion, and the time they spend on their foot is increased. So they're really then loading up those hamstrings. So that's what I tend to see in clinic regarding pathology, but it doesn't always work like that. I have runners that will come in and I think, right, I've got a good idea what you've got. You come with your knee pain. I've got a good idea how you're going to run, and then they do something completely different, and I'm sat there like, okay, back to square one. Let's go back to the drawing board and rethink this. Because as human beings, we are reliably unreliable. That's what makes us great. Is sort of, if we took the brain out of the equation, we could be like a bridge. We could work out the exact force and the exact load and what you need to do exactly. But as soon as you put the brain into the equation, that just messes everything up. And that's why I love my job, because it's no two people are the same. And that's the way we need to treat the gait analysis, that no two people are the same as well. We can't have a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, it's healthy. I think it's really healthy that runners who come for gait analysis or go for gait analysis, they realize that it is a bit of a jigsaw. It's not an exact science. Hopefully you're with a clinician who has got a wide enough kind of experience of what it could be, and then they start looking at stuff. So if you're suffering, like you say, from Achilles problems or calf pain, and you are running towards the forefoot, then they might think, right, well, let's just see what happens if we take you away from the forefoot and gait retrain you to land a little bit close to middle heel. And sometimes, again, research has shown, which is interesting, that if that can alleviate pain and help you get back into running, and then you may just drift back to forefoot and everything will be fine again. So it's not always changing someone's form forever, is it? Sometimes it's just changing it so that they're, like you say, the brain can get used to running again without being threatened.
Ask the interesting question: what happens when we get tired and we get fatigue sets in? So what happens at mile 10 of a marathon and mile 25? And that's where
Have you ever done that before? Do you get people to kind of, I mean, it's often it's hard logistics, but do you get people to go out and run 10 miles and then come and jump on the treadmill?
I've had people where they say, I get my symptoms at 10 miles. So I sort of say, look, come in early. I'll see a few more patients. You go upstairs, go on the treadmill for however long you need to, and then we'll come back. What I will do is I'll take a baseline measurement at fresh, and then I'll take one again at fatigue. And the beauty of the Run 3D system, I can then load them on the same report and do a direct comparison of them, and then I can show them the effects of fatigue on them and what can we do to try and help that. But I think it comes back to the fact that when we're talking about gait analysis, yes, it's important, but it's not it doesn't fix everything. And it's often with I don't know one condition in the lower limb. I'll only speak about lower limb because I've got no idea above the hip what's going on. So I think that there's never one injury that one treatment modality works for that person. There's often 2 or 3 things that we have to do to help get that runner back to running where they're happy. So it could be gait analysis, it could be linking to that gait re-education, it could be orthoses, it could be footwear, it could be load management advice, it could be strengthening, stretching and whatnot. But it's normally 2 or 3 things. It's never just one thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a very healthy outlook. Something that I hope people watching this will take on board. I mean, I have people who come here for gait analysis, and I'm sure you do it as well. You see them running and you're like, your running form looks great to me. Everything seems fine. The only thing that stands out isn't what you came in thinking was the problem. It's actually maybe this. It might be their recovery. It might be their just a training program. It might be their overtraining. I mean, that's the thing. But thanks to coming to see us, that's why I think sometimes I know, and maybe you know as well, I don't know what your prices are like, but I think sometimes they're surprised by how much gait analysis can cost.
Yeah.
But what people don't realize is they're not just paying for that hour or 2 hours with you. They're paying for all the research and the time you're spending keeping on top of evidence and training and doing courses. And so gait analysis can cost more than your kind of 45-minute massage. But we're not just looking at how you run, are we? We're drawing on that experience of everything else as well as the actual gait analysis.
Oh yeah, all my people, before they come to see me, they fill out a 4-page questionnaire. I want to know a history about them before I even see before I see a runner, what's going on. And the way I look at it, so look, a gait analysis will cost near enough the same as what a decent set of running shoes will cost. And actually, we've got what's known as a dynamometer in clinic. So we got the ability to strength testing and then put a number against how strong you are. And so if we to do that with the strength testing, then that costs the same amount as what a decent running watch costs as well. So when you speak to runners like that, like, well, actually, John, this is an investment in me to help get to where I want to. And yes, I do have plenty of runners where I sort of say, look, you've come in, you've got your left-sided knee issue, but in your history, you've told me in the past you've had left-sided Achilles issue, left-sided hip issues. So I'm thinking, okay, is there a functional left-sided problem? Do the gait analysis and it's all fine. And you say, look, do you know what? It's fine. You haven't got to worry about that. Actually, we just need to chat about you just being a little more meticulous on your strength training and making sure you're a little more sensible on how many miles you're doing and when you're increasing it and what you're changing in your running volume. But then they'll go away thinking, oh, do you know what? Actually, I'm okay. I'm happy, and I know what I need to work on now. Yeah,
and hopefully down the line they won't spend, 6 hours worth of money with different clinicians trying to find out what the problem is. That's the thing, isn't it? Because that's what eats up a lot of money when people look at how much they've paid maybe over the year for visiting.
Yeah.
I mean, because we know there's a lot of kind of potato hopping from, well, not potato hopping, but people will go to one clinician. If they don't hear what they like, they go to someone else, especially down here in Brighton. I don't know what it's like over in Southampton, but here there's probably 6, 7, 8 recommended people you could go and see. And before you know it, you could have spent $1,000 just on seeing different people to try and tell you what you want to hear, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think the thing about gait analysis, isn't it, is 2 hours or an hour with us to actually look at everything and then give you some self-management advice so that you haven't got to go and see someone else.
Yeah, and that's easy. An hour or 2 hours, and then we have an initial consultation, 45 minutes on top of that as well, just to go through everything, just to make sure we sort of crossed the T's and dotted the I's, because we want to give runners the right information that they can then use themselves. And I think that's what they like about the Run 3D system. It simplifies it down. It puts it in understandable pictures and data and graphs for them. So I can then show them, look, this is why I think you could be one of the reasons that's contributing towards your knee pain. It won't be the sole reason, but it's one of the reasons that's not helping. And then also then it gives me then all the data so then I can still be geeky afterwards. And then all I do, I give them the full report that has all that geeky data, but then I will then write them a simple word report in layman's term, in plain English, that sort of then they can then go away. So then they've got that data to refer back to any time they want to. And if they choose to go see someone else later on, they can then always still take that data. I'm very big on communication. I just love being open with patients. And if there's other therapists involved, I will always write them letters and communicate so everyone's aware of what's going on, because I think a lot of things break down because of lack of communication. But that's me taking a massive sidetrack from what we were speaking about.
No, not at all. No, it's like you said, gait analysis, loads of gear, but no idea. Communication is a massive part of that. It's giving the information out correctly, following it up, all that. Well, look, Nick, believe it or not, it's been an hour already.
Wow.
We haven't even touched on things like, I'm gonna have to chat to you another time about the actual 3D software, Run 3D software you use. But just to end things off, then, if people want more information on you, on 3D software, tell us about what they should do.
So website nksportspodiatry.co.uk, on Facebook, NKSportsPodiatry on Facebook, Instagram, where are we at? We are, I think it's NKSportsPod, and the same on Twitter as well. But yeah, look, I will happily have discussions with anyone and anyone. If people just want to ping me a question or query, I will try and get back to you in a timely fashion. And yeah, I'm there to be found. YouTube channel as well, which has some useful videos on exercises for runners. So you get to see me doing all the exercises, which may not be a good thing. It depends which way you look at it. But yeah, I'm up there just to try and educate people. I believe the more people we can educate, the better.
So you heard it, people. This is the struggle. Well, it is a bit of a struggle. There's so much crap out there, unfortunately. I use that word literally. So if you have appreciated what's on here, then do try and share it, because it's the only way we can try and get through the very attractive, flashy, but wrong information that kind of rules our internet waves. So okay, Nick, well, thank you very much once again. Thank you for giving up your free time. You realize it's free. You did read the email.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving up your time on a Sunday morning, because I know you got a little one.
Yes.
A year old, is she?
Yeah, turned a year on last Monday.
Oh, well, congratulations on that. I know how that feels.
You'll be up now, causing my wife loads of havoc, so I better go and earn some dad.
So yeah, thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and I hope you get some people contacting you through this to find out some more. And yeah, I wish you a very good day. Thank you very much, Nick.
No worries. Take care. See you later.
Ciao. Right, so that was Nick Knight, sports podiatrist extraordinaire. Thank you very much for joining us again. So quickly the hour goes. It was great to hear some comments from you as well. That's the advantage of listening to the live version. We had an interesting shout out from Lisa Shabbos about her recent ultra, which was great. Mark Benaldi was here. We had Martin, the guest from last week, he was here. We had people from Australia. There was Mark. There was Emily Ball joining us. So it's you can watch the recording, but it's lovely to actually see you join us live, because then maybe we can use you as a case history or something and give our guests some questions. So that's it. I am here, as always, at Studio 57/Stride UK. I'm here for the rest of today, as we've got running season shouting out loud with Brighton Half in February and the Brighton Marathon in April. So as always, if you've got any issues and you want to come to see me in person, then I'm at Studio 57/Stride UK. You can check me out on my website, sportinjurymat.co.uk, and everywhere on internet I am at sportinjurymat. So thanks again to Nick Knight, my guest. I hope you picked up some good things, and we will see you probably next week. I think we are, but look out on social media for who the guest is, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much, and goodbye.